and we'll probably hear my family in the background. So.
Fantastic. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to this recorded, very, very special interview with Carrie to talk about the amazing work that you're doing. So, can you tell us to start with what some of the work is that you're doing in the world?
Well, I'm an artist, but I don't really stop there. I have this tendency to kind of bring all different aspects of myself together. And so I've developed what I call art and action projects. So one of the main things that I work on is I work with different organizations out in the community, a lot of environmental organizations, schools, local governments even. And I create these big art and action projects around different environmental and social justice topics. And so I go and I teach about whatever the topic is, whether it's water quality or, how wasting food is contributing to climate change and poverty. And, I give these workshops talking about all these hard things, and then we make art in response to that. But I don't stop there, because then I take the artwork that everybody's made and turn it into a big collaborative art installations that are then put into public places so that they can continue to, spread awareness about the different subjects and inspire people to make changes and help the people who are involved in the project have a story to tell about what they're working on. So it's a really fun way of engaging with people.
Yeah, I actually have literal head to toe goosebumps right now, just hearing about that. And then this piece too of out of apathy and into action. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me more about what that means for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the world we live in, it can be pretty hard, right? If we look at the news, we just talk to people, there's this bombardment of negativity all around. And it's not just bombardment of negativity, but it changes all the time, right? And so we just can so easily become overwhelmed. And I don't know about you, but sometimes what that looks like to me is just stagnating and being oh, well, I can't do anything then, And so what I've found is when I create art in this collaborative ways with all these people, and then particularly when we can build something much larger than any one of us could really do on our own, it kind of just helps us to move through all of that stuff. So essentially we're immediately we're learning about things that are hard, but then we're taking action immediately to create change on it and creating something beautiful and amazing at the same time. And so I find that it really can just help people move through that kind of stuck feeling and be oh, wow, no, I can do this, right?
Ah, gosh, that's hitting me on all these levels. Kids do that, right? They learn about a problem and then they instantly take action on it, right? And how normal and human that is. And I think, so much of my work is along those lines, that if we all believed in ourselves, if we all believed in our capacity to make changes, we would. And then all of these issues that are so overwhelming and daunting when we think of ourselves as a single person.
Yeah, that trust you're talking about, right? I think that could be really hard for people to trust that what we're doing actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
And, one of the projects I did was called Rise Above Plastics, the Butterfly Effect. And you're probably familiar with the theory behind the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
So essentially it's this idea that a very small change in one place, like the flapping of a butterfly's wings, can create a huge change somewhere else, like a hurricane, right? On the other side of the world. And so in this project, everybody was learning about plastics, and then they were creating butterflies out of upcycled Capri Sun pouches. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how, we just don't know what the impact of our actions are, right? But so I get to believe that even though while I may carry a reusable bottle and I can see that millions of people are throwing them away every day, but I don't know how me doing that one small thing might impact somebody else, who might impact somebody else, and create this just cascade effect. I may never know, but if I believe it, if nothing else makes me feel like I can do something.
Great. And And it is a thing, right? And then if everyone is able to do a thing, or this idea of pitching them all together, right? And that you had mentioned something about your work then influencing like climate policy.
Yeah.
You know
So
that?
right. So I recently read about, actually at the turn of the pandemic, I was working with the Thirst and Climate Action Team in Olympia, Washington. And, the pandemic shifted and everybody was like, what do we do? And essentially I was like, well, I could, do this project about, like, I could talk about collaborative art, do a webinar or something. But as I started thinking about it, it became this big thing because that's what happens in my brain. I don't know. And I created with this virtual program called the Chrysalis Project, Transforming Together. And I worked with about 200 different local people talking about how we are, this place we were in with the pandemic and climate change and the racial reckoning, and making a comparison of how this transformation we're in right now is very similar to what happens when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, right? And so we were really envisioning what our futures were going to look like, but then people took action right away by writing letters to local government asking for strong climate action and passing the Thirst and Climate Mitigation Plan. But then they also, on the other side of their letters, they drew their vision for the future inside of a butterfly motif.
Oh,
They created this beautiful artwork and then sent them to our local representatives. And I could tell you stories of like how that impacted individual county commissioners, for instance. And I got to present about this at the Olympia City Council meeting when they were making their vote on whether or not to take up the Thirst and Climate Mitigation Plan. And I mean, this project doesn't take all credit for it because there was a lot of groundwork laid and people have been working on this for a long time, but all 4 of our jurisdictions have now adopted this plan, and all 4 of them received these letters and were impacted by them. And also 3 of the 4 jurisdictions declared a climate emergency at the same time, which is huge. So well.
And just thinking about these people receiving the letters, right, and knowing what intention went into that letter, not just I'm going to write this thing, which also has intention, but to actually create around a vision, right? Not just focusing on here's the areas that are problematic, because I think most of us know, right? And we could make a list of all the things that are wrong, right? But to focus on, well, here's an idea, or here's something that I've created that is a possibility, right? And to actually, send that with the letter is stunning.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and people wrote not just like, hey, please do this thing, but they talked about their own personal commitments and like how they were feeling in the pandemic and with climate change. And during the county commissioner meeting where they were deciding whether or not to adopt the plan, one of the commissioners pulled the letter out of his pocket and said he'd been carrying it around for the past several months as like his guiding light. And he opened it up and read it, and it was written by a high school student who was also a climate activist, and it was just this beautiful letter, and it's just amazing to see how she impacted this one person, and I'm sure the other letters did as well.
Right. I think that butterfly effect is such a lovely metaphor for talking about this, right? That I think absolutely people don't believe that what they see as a possibility is a possibility, right? And then giving them a vehicle to say, here, do this, and you're doing this collectively, right? So you're getting the catharsis of being in community and having a shared experience where you're able to process together the climate grief and all the things that have been happening in the world, and then to actually put that into something that is quantifiably has made a difference now is really remarkable. So what's led you to this work?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. What led me to this work? In college, I started studying art a little bit. I mean, I didn't grow up in an art family. I grew up in a very conservative area, and I didn't really even know that being an artist was a thing. Like, I didn't know. But when I was in college, I started really getting interested in bringing art and science together. And so I tried for years trying to bring the two together. And I worked as a naturalist for a long time. And so that was a great way for me to practice like bringing art into my, my naturalist programming and taking kids out into nature and adults and making art, and which was amazing and lovely. And but I always just kind of felt like I was missing something, like wasn't quite getting there, and so I just kept developing it over time. I took a stint where I decided to be a mural artist, and I went out there and I tried to start my business being a mural artist, and I completely failed, like total failure. Couldn't even pay my rent, had to get this job. I was so fortunate actually, but I say I had to get this job with Thurston County because it was the thing that I was like, I'm not going to get the cushy county job because I'll never leave, right? And I did. I got the cushy county job. But the funny thing is, because you know how the universe has a great sense of humor sometimes, it was in that job where I really figured out how to bring the arts and sciences together with this collaborative format that really allowed me to take this to the next level. And so it's funny where you sometimes you go to the place, you're like, I don't want to go there. That's not going to help. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, this was actually great.
And what purpose, right, to be able to marry those? Because I hear, from a lot of people, in this work, and then also throughout my life, right, of people who are artists or creatives who don't feel like they can, make a living off of their art, off of their work, the thing that they're so called to do. And also we are so overwhelmed by, or many of us, me included, right, can be so overwhelmed about the state of the world and all of the areas, that need love, right? And so for you're being able to bring those two together in a way where you're able to not just teach about these things and practice these things, but then actually turn them into breeding grounds for more growth is really phenomenal. I'm very impressed.
And I feel like it's like one of the things, I don't know, like it every day. Sometimes I'll be like, look around and be like, whoa, I'm an artist. Like, how did this happen? It wasn't something that I ever thought was possible. And I just have so much gratitude to be able to do this work. And it's in a lot of ways a mystery to me how it gets to be.
Yeah, well, and that's great, talking about the universe, the sense of humor too, right? In that sense that you're called to something and it just unfolds before you, right? Called to mural work, and that didn't quite work out, and then one thing after another, and here you are, also providing hope, right, in the time of a very challenging time.
Right. And I still paint murals. Like, but now I'm really all about community murals and bringing lots of people together. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've heard a couple little kids buzzing around in the background.
Just one.
a little vocal kid. So what's it like to, be a mom while also doing this meaningful, world-changing work?
Well, you say while also doing it, but I think that we have to remember, and I have to remember because it's so hard to remember this, and I feel emotional even just like thinking about it, that this work with my child, that is world-changing work, right? That you have kids too.
Yeah, yes? I do.
Yeah, and like, is that not some of the most radical work we can do, is raising these little human beings? And some of the most challenging and the most rewarding all at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it is, it's such a balance. And I think that so I have a daughter, she's 4 years old, and she's a big reason for my why, like why I do this work. I can remember when she was just an infant, sitting on the couch, not long after the 2016 elections, with my little baby girl, and just being like, oh my God, what do I do? And sitting there in meditation and just like trying to breathe through it all. And like having the thought come to me of, okay, yeah, it's amazing. Like I'm so privileged. I can spend a lot of time with my kid, right? Like I am so privileged in that way. And if I really want to be the best mom that I can be, I need to go out into the world and like walk my talk and like show her what it looks like to be engaged and be living the life that I want to live. And so I think that, you know, when we talk about like, well, what's that like balancing that? Well, it's hard, right? And it's like, it's why we do it, you know, it's so important, you know, for her, for all the little kids, right? I mean,
Absolutely. My daughter, she's 4 as well. And so I was in labor for 4 days. And so I was in labor on election day, and she actually held out. We had no idea what was going on, I guess blissfully, but then she held out until, 1:00 the day after. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we have a baby girl. And then we found out, this is what happened.
Wow. Wow.
And so I relate to all of that so deeply. And I think you're right that our children learn by our actions more so than by our words, right? And so not just, hey, here's this world that I believe in, that there's ways that we can change it, but here's also these ways that I'm engaged in showing up for her, for the world, and she gets to see you shine your light.
Yeah, my imperfect light, right?
Yes, yeah, how lovely. So has she been involved in any of the art projects?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, she's still pretty young, but we spend a lot of time in the studio and she helps me all the time. She's my biggest helper for sure. And she's a super creative kid and loves art. And so I just imagine that growing over time, you know, how she interacts and helps and takes over, and, you know, actually that's not a good idea, let's do it this way. I mean, she already does that, but yeah, definitely. My husband's an artist too, and so we have a pretty artful family.
So fun. So, the reason we're recording this interview is because you have a big launch coming up next week. And so I'd love to hear and share more about that.
Yeah, totally. So this is a 3-day free online program called Climate Action Through Art, Out of Apathy and Into Action. And so we're going to spend 3 days really looking at what collaborative art is, like why it is so powerful. We're going to be looking at some really, nuts and bolts of how to do it, and also at our own transformation, right? So we're going to spend some time looking at our own selves and how we can step up and fulfill what we need to do in the world. But I am so excited about it. I think I was so excited planning it that I actually decided to plan it a 4th day. So next week is Earth Week and Thursday is Earth Day. So I created an event for that day. It's a standalone event. So if you can't go to the first 3 days, you could just go to the one event, or vice versa. But that day is called Dream Big for Earth Day. And so the whole idea of that day is to have this ginormous brainstorm to come up with like the most amazing, collaborative, world-changing climate action project we can. And, even exploring funders and collaborators and just like, I don't know, we're just going to throw it all out there and see what comes from it, because who knows, right? We got it. Like, this is how things start. And so I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I am just so excited to be in the room with a ton of, already there's so many amazing artists signed up, and environmental educators and teachers and, people who are just change makers in the world. That is just going to be fabulous.
So how do people sign up if they want to be participate in this amazing 2 spanning 4-day events?
Yeah, great question. You can go to my Facebook page, which is Carrie Ziegler Earth Art. And I've got the link right on the top there. You'll sign up through Eventbrite so that I can get you all the great information about how to, make sure you have everything ready. We'll be doing the workshop through Zoom, so it's all online. And then I'll also be streaming it into my Facebook group, Climate Action Through Art. So you can also join that group, Climate Action Through Art, and get all the information you need there.
Okay. And what kind of supplies will people need?
Not much. You come with yourself. You'll need paper, pen, pencil if you want to do some drawing or anything, bring some, whatever you like that's convenient, but mostly show up with yourself and your, openness to learn and engage. We'll be doing a lot of great breakout groups and just, meeting with each other and forming community and collaborating and I'm just really excited about it.
Oh, it's so lovely. And, I love this idea of you're creating this space, right? And specifically on this Earth Day piece, right? Of like, you don't know what's going to come from it, which is great, right? That it gets to be, you hold the space and all these people come together and allowing those ideas to percolate, and what is, going to rise will rise,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that's, well, and that's the thing with art, right? Is like, it's always a journey into the unknown. And so why should that be any different with an event like this? Like, let's just step off together and see what happens. I
yeah.
can only imagine it will be something amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And then how long are the events?
So the Monday through Wednesday are each an hour and a half. So it starts at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the Thursday event is, I'm going to throw out 4 hours starting at 10 Pacific Standard Time, but I honestly have no idea how long that will take. So
Perfect. So when we post this recording, we will post those links as well. And I am so honored to have had you here today talking about your sacred contribution and what an impact it makes in the world. And so honored, Carrie, to have you in our community as well.
thank you so much, Lauren. This has been just a real treat to meet you. And, I'd love to hear more about you and your life and your kids. But hey, two little 4-year-old girls right here that are probably going to be changing the world next week. So,
right. Absolutely. Well, have such a lovely evening and enjoy your events. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from them.
Thank you so much. I will. I look forward to seeing. Yeah, I'm pretty excited myself.